Hello there and welcome back to War Thunder. Today I want to talk about three things in particular. The Type-62, then also a bit how to do the light tank job, but as a matter of the fact, the most important things, the first few seconds of a battle. The Type-62 is kind of a very interesting tank for me. It's a reward tank without any sort of special silver line or RP income. Nevertheless, it has a battle rating of 6.7, which for the Russians it's kind of a battle rating gap. Just the premium T-34-100 and the Su-100P are sitting in there, but the majority of tanks around it are sitting at 6.3 or 7.3. We just have one tank at 7.0, the T-44-100. Those tanks are all very nice. They have their strengths and weaknesses, but I think the three weaknesses of the Type-62 are, well, first of all, the lack of any sort of smoke, then also the slow turret rotation speed of just under 10 degrees per second, and also kind of the reload speed and the gun depression. The reload speed is not that much of an issue, but it's really the lack of gun depression for a light tank. So it is very interesting if you compare it with an RD-251. I actually have a very old tank review on this tank called Who Needs Heat FS, where I talked about this. This tank began its career in the very first day after its introduction at battle rating 5.7. Then it got up tiered and also received the Heat FS. So the two shell types that I alternate between is the BR-365A, which is a Russian APHE BC round, so flat-nosed, but it deals a bit better with angled armor, despite what you see here on the stat card. You also could alternately choose the BR-367, which is the upgraded APCBC round that you also find on the T-44, and then of course an APCR, but very limited use, except if you just want to kill a tank by shooting through the engine block, which none of the other shell types can do. The Type 1956 Heat FS is also capable of dealing with any sort of enemy that you'll face with 300 millimeters of penetration. So in contrast to the Object Nano 6, you lack the autoloader reload. You have double the reload or a bit more. You just not even have half. Well, you kind of have half the turret rotation speed. You don't have the stabilizer, and you're also not kind of able to swim. So just to give you a bit of point of view, of perspective, the Object Nano 6 began its career, if I'm not mistaken, at 7.0 and got up to, unsurprisingly, to 8.0. So what I want to talk about here is the job of a light tank. Very often in War Thunder that is difficult because you just don't have the room to maneuver. You don't have the hiding places in open field. The matches are not long enough so that your impact is that great. And especially in city maps, a light tank, well, when it's a regular light tank, you know, that doesn't have a stabilizer at around this battle rating bracket, the sense of a light tank very often is limited because of how the maps are designed and how easy it is sometimes for the enemy to make an intercepting shot, and then your speed is not really that relevant. Especially currently in the game, one thing that highly annoys me is when you drive into a wooden barrel, when you drive into a wooden tank trap, when you drive over a bush or a fence or a tree, you come shortly to a dead stop. And that is just so punishing. That is really, really punishing, frustrating, and it needs to be worked on. And then to the actual final part that we need to talk about, and that is the first few seconds of a match. They are highly, highly important. If you play it right, if you do your job as a light tank on an appropriate map, you can have a lot of influence by spotting the enemy and by delivering side shots, by being a distraction, by diverting the enemy forces into dealing with you, where then the enemy expose their sides to your teams that are on the front line. But it's really the positioning that makes the first few seconds of a match so important. So no join in progress, no real loitering around in your spawn. And this is where another point of criticism comes. When you spawn, you decide you want to take, for instance, the left flank, and you go there. And then suddenly you just move, accelerate, and bam, somebody just spawns in front of you. You come to a screaming halt, or you crash into him. You just don't have the room to move around, and then, you know, Gaijin's advanced physics, where the tanks are seemingly glued together, really make your blood boil as a light tank driver, because it's just so punishing. So without further ado, I have some nice gameplay for you, and we will talk about more about these topics just in a moment. So here we are on the Mostok map, and that is a good map for a light tank, because in theory it offers a lot of room to maneuver. In practice, it's really difficult to find the nice spots, to know how to get into them unseen, how to maneuver. A lot of people try the move that I'm doing here right now, well, at least once, I guess, and then they just make not the very best experiences with those kind of moves, and then they just think about, you know, god damn it, I don't try it again, it's not working out too well, I try something else. But sometimes it is in the exact maneuvering, in the exact things, how you deal with a certain map, where you precisely go. Just a few centimeters of difference in your movement can make the, well, difference between a good game and a bad game, and every single action matters. So what I'm doing here, I use the very first seconds to make a plan. I want to go here behind this ridgeline and you know, go on the other side of the road embankment. Meanwhile, I scout. Scout doesn't really alert the enemy, but it gives your team an idea where the main bulk, or at least certain tanks, single tanks, are on the enemy, are on the map from the enemy. If somebody is charging you and your gun breach is taken out, you might just spot an enemy, and your team just sees a big fat, well, red icon on the minimap, and they just think, ooh, free kill. There is already an object 120. My artillery strike actually kills an M56 Scorpion, and those tanks are highly dangerous. Of course, my Russian flat-nosed APHE BC round bounces on an object 120. I also have the very same experience if I shoot it with a Jagdtiger. Sometimes the shells just go somewhere. Panther 2, and we get a respectable hit into him. The second shot should kill him. There we go. And at the same time I receive a heat shell. Normally a heat shell from that angle would kill you. However, as it will turn out in just a few moments, it was a heat shell, not a heat FS shell, from an MX-30. I stand by it. I still think that the heat shells were really crap when I tested them the last time, when I made the last videos about them, and it's really punishing. So it's nice to be on the receiving end for once. I mean, it would be better to not get shot in the first place. And then we see the other thing, the punishment in repair time with just 2 crew members left of nearly 40 seconds. Now I see the enemy, and if they would really charge me, I'd have a problem. I really hate it that your gun breach gets knocked out and then you have to invest such a very long repair time. It's not very good for the gameplay, and it's not very good from a realistic standpoint, because from a realistic standpoint you'd need to return to the base and really need to repair it in a capture zone. But from a gameplay perspective, it's really annoying, and I have to go through the full reload as well, because, you know, this is how the things are. So the MX-30, I marked him and he drew some attention from my team. I go over the ridgeline aggressively, and now I take a bit more time than necessary and made sure that I delete him. But there was a second tank and I was not really sure where it is. Here you see the tracks in the ground, and it's actually a T-54-47, so he doesn't actually see me. And now I aim carefully on the flat side of the back of the turret, and we execute him. Good stuff right there. So that was important to kill those two flankers, and that was a very important sort of support for my team if they know where certain enemy tanks are, that they know somebody is on the flank, so they stay in cover up until the point that I made sure that this threat is gone. Talking about a threat, there is a Soviet Object 120. The Panther now got deleted that I scouted previously, and also here we destroyed the Object 120 with a single shot. And then we were pretty lucky that this kind of, what is it, P-47, I guess, well, didn't kill us. I tried to shoot him down, but my heavy machine gun is gone, and that was a bit of overleading, but with such a slow turret rotation speed, you have your difficulties. So, our team could not really profit from the support that I gave it in terms of securing this flank. And one lesson that is so important for me personally is avoid capture zones. Avoid trying to cap at this sort of state. I know capture zones are important, but you will die as a result of trying to stay in the cap, capturing it. The enemy will proceed to flank you, and even if you have captured it and get out there, they still have for quite some time a very good idea where you are, where you might be. And so I try to flank more around it, and this is kind of, you know, should you not flank? Should you support the enemy's destruction? But should you try to harvest the enemy AAA? What exactly should you do at this point? Well, you still try to continue what you're doing best, scouting the enemy and taking clean kills. Again, this is now the important part where you must not draw the enemy's attention. Avoid to get spotted by enemy light tanks. Avoid to get marked by machine gun fire from enemy tanks. Try to avoid the head-on engagement, and try to just simply make, if you make a kill, that you make it a one shot. And this is where this tank's APHE shell is just, or APHE BC round, is just so much better than a heat shell or even a HESH shell. A HESH shell, in theory, if it hits the very right pixel, will spall and deal a lot of internal damage. But a Russian APHE BC round or an APCBC round, if it has enough penetration power, it doesn't really care about the tracks or some side skirts or any sort of weird stuff that is mounted on the side of the tank. It will penetrate and deal massive damage. And even if very often it's not a one shot, it will do so much damage that you have the time to make the, follow-up shot. And here I mess up. I mess up greatly. I aim too low and just hit the back of the turret of the Super Hellcat. I loiter, I'm hanging around too long. Then a heat shell comes in. I should have just spotted the tanks, should have not been so greedy, and I get punished by it. And so it's just a matter of a few seconds before I get destroyed. I was repairing in the wrong spot, and before I can just turn around and try to disengage, well, the fourth heat shell from an AMX-30 is my end. And again here, watch this. The very first seconds of this match are important. Just try to avoid crashing into a tank. Pray to the snail, that is Gaijin, that they will not let a tank of your team let spawn in your way. Here I actually made sure that the artillery strike gets dropped and actually creates a lot of dirt in the air that covers my pathway. I'm kind of in the open, but the enemy team has not deployed. So it needs to really be very precise timing. And so here I can make use out of my scouting ability and actually give away the position of one of the enemy tanks. And again, I'm here in a very good spot. I need to just make sure that I stay in the low ground. First, you need to be like a little Anakin, but then you must not fight from the low ground. You must to find hard cover, find the high grounds. You know, bad jokes are for free on this channel. You need to always take an advantageous fight, and you need to get into positions very early on where the enemy again has not deployed. And this is just possible in the very first seconds of a game. It's really difficult to explain it, but if I would begin to drive now from the spawn because I'm joining progress or I was just AFK for the very first seconds, then I would not be in this position, and also getting into this position would be much more difficult. That was a very weird shot, and the Tiger has now a very good idea where I am, but I still aim then for the front plate, and he was angled. He was angled. Russian APHE BC round doesn't care. This is a message that a lot of people don't get, where they just think, yeah, you just got destroyed in a Tiger because you didn't angle. That's not so easy with a Tiger, actually. There are many reasons for that by themselves. I spared them to you right now. I spare you those reasons right now while we do a very nice kill on a Panzer IIIB. Not quite sure what this guy was thinking, taking this vessel into this battle. Maybe he misclicked, maybe he was there with a friend, maybe he tried to get one epic kill with this low tier tank that is not the very best. Slow turret rotation speed, long reload for that caliber, lack of penetration. It's not a very good tank, and it also doesn't have the very best, well, kind of mobility. And while I talked about, you know, German tanks, guess what I did here? I spot, I distract the enemy, and I make sure that some of them also get killed once I have the range down, like that. And so it's very important, because look at where I am. I allow my team to support them across the map. Here, even on C, I made sure that not a lot of reinforcements go into B, and I made sure that also not a lot of reinforcements would have joined the fight in A. But I'm not really spawn camping. But if I would like look 15 or 30 degrees more to the left, I would actually already intercept tanks that spawn from their spawn. And that is really, again, a map design issue, how the respawn system works, spawn points, the capture the flag mode or capture point mode. It's all interacted with each other. However, there is always that one approach that you complain about those issues, or you adapt to them, and you just don't play certain tanks or certain nations that don't fit the meta like that. And you try to abuse the system as a, you know, player that wants to go through the grind. Honorable gameplay is not found very often, and did the heat shell just ricochet? I have no idea how much damage that I did to him, but this is the advantage of a solid shot. It just doesn't do this weird bouncing, disappearing stuff like certain heat FS shells, even though it's a Russian shell. Even they are, you know, vulnerable to Gaijin's magic programming. And I just... my trust lies within Russian APHE BC round. They rarely disappoint. It's mostly then a user error if you don't kill something with them. As you can see, I demonstrated them. If you just shoot at impossible angles or very thick armor, they do not really do magic stuff, but they are as close to magic stuff as possible. What happens now is, of course, the spawn camping. Now, kind of I'm sorry for it, but kind of I'm not. However, from this point onwards, I can assure you that the game will continue for 5 more minutes. From this point onwards. So, of course, I will cut out certain parts, but I will present you some highlights. So, first of all, I think I want to show you the shot against the Panther turret, because I deal massive damage, but it was quite not good enough to kill the radio operator and I want to make sure that a second shot would kill that, because he was already red, you know, he had a red shot, so he was he was about to die. Star Trek nerd. And I got at least a supporting fire for it. A very desirable achievement these days, right? And that was a very good drop by the BF-109 against infantry. So much for the highlights. This BF-109 though was very good at, you know, attacking a light tank, and maybe he would have hit me directly with the bomb, and then of course it would have been my end. Maybe the bomb would have even destroyed me if he wouldn't really have the misfortune of dropping here into the trench. Now he goes and tries a head-on with me, but in a head-on versus a Russian tank, even a German plane loses, I can assure you that. So 5 kills. That was a really nice ending to this battle. The rest was just spotting the enemy, and I didn't get any more kills. But now it's going to be very interesting when we have a look at the results. For a non-premium tank to get nearly 50,000 silver lines and 3,700 modification research points, which would be more if the vehicle research would be done at the same tier, with a survivor medal, is always a sign that you did very well. 1 plane, 5 tank kills, and a lot of enemy kill assists and a lot of scouting according to intelligence. Intelligence and survivor medal is always a very nice combination. And 2,044 score points. Again, very important for getting something done in your grind towards the IS-7. So that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this battle compilation. You enjoyed kind of my approach towards trying to tell you about the most important time frame of a battle, the very first few seconds. That's it for me today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if you did. Subscribe if you want to see more. And we'll see each other on the battlefields of War Thunder.